This is The Body's Compass with Matt Sorensen and today's guest, Peter Williams, the founder of the New Paradigm Institute. Peter has extensive experience as an integrative coach, trainer, facilitator, and teacher. His mission is to help people unlock their true potential by becoming highly impactful coaches themselves. Let's join Matt and Peter as they discuss the new paradigm shift.
Welcome to The Body's Compass. I'm your host, Matt. Today I'm joined by someone I've actually quite known for a long time. I was thinking about this morning. I remember, I think I met Pete in, was it Mrs. Watson's back in the day?
Back in old school guy me.
Yeah. On my way home from work, stop in for a smoothie and get supplies. And Pete was always up for a checkout chat. And we'll get into it deeper later. But the reason I think Peter and I clicked was Peter was really interested in what I was, I guess, doing at the time. And, you know, every time you go to a checkout, it's always, hey, how are you? How's your day? No one means it. And that just irritates me at every single shop. So Pete was one of the rare ones that actually meant it. I remember one day I said, had a bit of a rough day. And he's like, no, tell me what happened. I was like, holy shit. Okay. So Pete and I have stayed in touch over the years. I was funny because I was only you came up into a thought in my mind a couple of months ago. And then about a week later, I saw you randomly on a feed doing something. Like, I wonder what Pete's up to. So anyway, now we get to see what Pete's up to. Welcome.
It's so cool to be here. And it's like a sliding door moment. Like 8 years later into my business, it's like a new phase of life and business. And that was just before the beginning of the journey.
Yeah. That's like a whole shocker ago.
Totally.
Yeah. So Pete, before we get into it, and we want to get to have a bit of sense of who you are as a person. So what has shaped you as a man and molded you into what you are, who you are today, and how that's going to influence everything we're going to talk about, and why you've put so much time and effort into, I guess, entrepreneurship? Would that be the word?
Yeah, entrepreneurship, just like you, like the game of entrepreneurship, right?
Yep.
So I'd say there's two parts. There's the part of my story that led me to business. And then there's my newer story of the journey of business. So what I would share was before I got into serving people, like I know you would get and you would see in your clients, I was one of the people bouncing around the medical merry-go-round looking for answers. I was consistently shy, nervous, ended up in drug and alcohol rehab centers. So I saw the ins and outs of the merry-go-round and came out to work in the fitness industry. So that's where I geeked out on so much of your functional movement and stuff like that. But along that journey, then I started to develop autoimmune disease stuff.
That's right.
So so then I started to bounce around even more of the medical merry-go-round of just no answers. I remember back with rehab, they would talk to us like we were broken china that was very delicate. I still remember that moment. And then I remember sitting in front of a rheumatologist and him saying, this is the best we can do for you. You just need to take this medication. And I was like 23 or 24 at the time. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. So then I studied natural medicine. And then I was like, the mind is fundamental. Studied hypnotherapy, coaching, and that started my entrepreneurial journey, the most recent stuff to even riff off because I now work with entrepreneurs. That meant like the excitement of the adventure of, I launched my business, I'm helping people, I'm going to have freedom and going out there. And I was creating impact. I was serving people. But I've seen this in a lot of entrepreneurs and myself included. Then there was the golden days and then all of a sudden it stopped. And what came up of success in business and achievement came down. And that meant I found myself with periods with all this revenue, all this impact happening, isolating myself. And this is a common pattern I see with the men that come to me. Like, I was just isolated and so stressed that I was just glued to my business, and it looked like my business was my source of safety, right? Caveat to that, then I ended up in properties full of mold. And I'm sure you know about toxic mold and the impact of that. So I literally lost myself for like a year to a year and a half. My brain was inflamed. I didn't know where I was. And I literally had to find and build myself back together alongside serving men every week, picking up the patterns from them. So I guess the last major impacts were my father passed last year, and that was a whole transformation in and of itself. And I've come out the other side of an 8-year journey of a bit of a blur, lots of wins, lots of adventures, lots of challenges, to just see being a man so differently and being an entrepreneur so differently.
Yeah, it's funny you say the serving people thing, because a lot of people have that calling to be of some service. They don't know what capacity, and that's fine. But I see it when I teach, check level 1 and 2. A lot of them are plumbers or electricians or accountants, builders, whatever it is, but they want to go into the check stuff or the Burnout stuff and start their own business and do their own thing. But there's always that imposter syndrome underlying the psyche. And I myself, I can't remember if there was a time and a place, but I definitely would have been shut down as a kid. And that made me form for myself an unconscious belief of, well, no one wants to hear what I have to say. So I went really, really quiet in myself, because I had this belief that, oh, well, no one wants to hear what I say, so I'm just going to zip it. Then you add 20 plus years of training and education and all that kind of stuff. You want to give everyone everything you've got from that, everything that you know. But then there comes a little shift where, for me personally, everything I knew and accumulated over 20 plus years had got really heavy. And that's why I find doing this podcast really therapeutic, because I get to share it. And there's evidence of people wanting me or wanting to hear what I have to say. And it was quite funny. A couple of weeks ago, I did a solo podcast on nutrition, and I shared a German bread recipe. And so that, my partner, Kim, she's German, and we went to Germany last year, and I picked up a bread recipe, because Germans are known for their beer and bread. They're known for other things too, but we won't go into that today. So I shared the recipe, and I'm getting texts, I'm getting messages through Instagram and emails of people making the bread. And they're all saying, oh, I can't have bread here, but I can have this bread. And it's amazing. And that just completely lights me up. Absolutely lights me up. And that little thought of people don't want to hear what I have to say gets sort of chiseled away every single time. And if that wouldn't have happened, I wouldn't have been able to step into that, not spotlight, but step out of that to do all the entrepreneurship kind of stuff to begin with. What do you find the key factors are in which, the entrepreneurs, what's the key factors that are holding most people back that you see?
Well, I love what you just spoke to with your story. I really resonate as well. Like, oh, I don't have anything to share. Who am I? Imposter, etc. And it ties into something Kim would know well, where our greatest voids become our greatest values. The greatest challenges and pains and suffering that we've experienced becomes our deep passion to contribute to others within the world. So what I would say, and honestly, I've come out of that block in recent months. Like, I launched an institute teaching practitioners. I taught 2 cohorts and still had that story of who am I? I don't know. And they'd be like, my whole life is transformed. And in my brain, I'd be like, yeah, but still there's other people sharing what I know. But what holds them back is innocent misunderstandings and concepts of how they see themselves as well as how they see the world. And I saw for me, Matt, underneath that, if we think about the emotional brain and the survival brain that just isn't logical, that thing having invisible meanings that it's made that then become the invisible prison that men live in. I love this analogy. You may have heard of it. You put a flea in a jar, you put the lid on the jar, you take the lid off, the flea stays in it. It can get out, but it just learned, oh, that's my limit. So I see, like you saw and like I've been seeing, entrepreneurs, they just live with invisible limits of that's possible, that's not possible. And then their brain just operates as if that's true.
Well, it's funny you mentioning, the brain stem, because it's the lowest part of the brain. And it's what we have as a brain stem, 90%, that's 90% of a reptile's entire brain. That's why they call it the reptilian brain. It only has computing capacity for safety, sustenance, and sex in that order. It doesn't have the capacity for anything else outside that. That's why, like, a crocodile will happily eat its kids, where some kind of mammal unlikely to do that. But most people operate just from that level all the time, and that becomes their reality. And that becomes, if you operate from that brainstem level, not only are you projecting that, but that's how you perceive the world. Everyone's a predator, or everyone's food, or everyone's a special lie down friend, depending where you're at.
Yeah, I like it's interesting. Polyvagal theory, you may have heard that it's not kind of been disproven, but they've updated it more. The concepts are still great, but to speak to what you just spoke to in polyvagal, where they talk about neuroception and how we're either perceiving cues of safety in the world or we're perceiving cues of threat, but that's below the surface. I'm not cognitively thinking, oh, that guy looks like a bully from school. It's just feel threat. And to what you're speaking to, I know for years my body was in the state of striving to protect versus striving to connect. And I just want people to access that striving to connect. That's what this podcast is doing, right?
Yeah. What do you find working with men is I guess, if there's a common theme that got them there?
They don't know what's in their control. And they have learned to believe that they no longer have agency over themselves or their lives. And to simplify it, that they're a victim to it and to the experiences that come up in their body. So they live in a world, they can still be achieving and succeeding, but there's still a part of them that's like, yeah, but I can't control this horrible feeling or this activation or this arousal, or I can't influence and change my life because they've got the flea jar, right? So I would say, I was thinking about it today and I was like, what is the highest level of it? They don't see the factors that they can control to create a life by design rather than just be living on autopilot by default.
But also, this society isn't, let's just say, psychologically supportive of people doing that either, because there are so many rules, so many laws, so many restrictions where it's like having a really strict parent. To the degree the parent's really strict, the child's either going to be really suppressed as an adult and just follow orders, #COVID, or they're going to, they're going to find a way around it, and they're going to get really clever and creative to get around that little rock in the stream, and which could potentially get them in real trouble, maybe even death in some cases. I find there's a saying from Carl Jung, I don't know if it's a saying, but essentially he was saying, neurologically speaking, the way we relate to the outside world is wired by the same-sex parent. So right now, our dads are having a conversation unconsciously. But then when we press, hang up, goodbye, and we go and do our own thing, that's when our opposite-sex parent comes online. So how your mum is as a person is how you start to relate to yourself, psychologically speaking. And I find that true with people all the time, just in how they speak to themselves. And, I have people come in here and, I can't do that because, I'm the classic kind of line, I work at a bank, I'll do my corporate thing. It's great money, but I absolutely hate it. I said, cool. What would you do if money wasn't a thing? I would work with animals. Oh, but, got to get a veterinary degree, so I can't do that. I said, well, who else in your family talks down to yourself, mum or dad? Yeah, it's dad, actually. And it's always a female every single time.
Yeah. Yep. Our perceptions become our projections, right?
Mm.
We're just projecting out onto the world. So yeah, it's a pattern. When we understand humans, it's like, oh yeah, there's another pattern.
Yeah, and humans can be quite predictable as well. You'll notice just as there are patterns in nature, there's patterns with people all the time. And when you get, when you train your eye, it's not hard to read the book that someone presents, because when someone comes to you or you're interacting with someone, you're actually reading their entire story of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual evolution. You can't not wear your truth, right?
Hang on. And what I've found over 8+ years, as you would get, you even longer, is pattern recognition. You just learn to, I like what Tony Robbins says, like whatever people think about him, how he says you learn to recognize patterns, then you learn to utilize those patterns, then you learn to create new patterns to create better change in the world. So imagine like yourself blending so many methodologies. For me, I can, oh, here's that pattern. Oh, how can we utilize that pattern that I've seen another person use? Or how do I create a whole new pattern that just solves so much of that unnecessary crap? You know?
Yeah. Now we've spoken a little bit about, I guess, the mentality of what stops people. What have you found to be physical factors contributing to that?
Yeah. So the men that come to me, I call them Ferraris, and I smile. You're like, what's a Ferrari? They're a high performer. If they're locked onto something, look out, they're unstoppable. But when they come to me, they've gone off the road, mud's going everywhere. And I'll say to them, I'm like, you're such a Ferrari. They go, oh yeah, you really know me. I'm like, I just work with people like you all the time. But what that means is, like we see in the science, it's shown that up to 87% of people presenting with anxiety, they have hyperventilation syndrome. They're overbreathing. So what I find with these men is that even when the stress and demands of business are gone, their body's still stuck in this overbreathing compensatory pattern, which is leading to low oxygen to the brain, low oxygen to the cells, and less vagal tone. And just to simplify that for listeners, just the responsiveness of a mechanism in our body to help us feel safe and to rest and repair. So that's the first point of call. I'm like, let's just get you breathing right. Because then in their world, in the car, they're like, this thing's like falling apart. What the hell do I do? It's like, that's your first toggle you can put your hand onto. Oh, I get an immediate effect. The whole thing calms down when I do that. So it's my first point of call. And then they're like, they start to get hope.
Would you say most males come to you to yang?
Yeah. So I would say that and I remember you talking about this back in the day. So two common states, they're either stuck in yang and they're like, Peter, I can't sleep, or I need alcohol to get to sleep, or I'm just anxious all the time. Or it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's sad. It's just the other presentation. They're in freeze. So they'll say things like, I couldn't even get up on the weekend to spend time with my wife or kids. Like, what the hell is wrong with me? There's this horrible feeling and I haven't had it before. And I see, the yang. And then I'd be curious on your understanding if freeze would be considered yin or if it's excessive yang. Not sure with your perspective on
I think it could be anything. I think if you keep going yang, it can only go one way, and that's to burnout. That's like you could argue that's a forced yin, if you will. Also, a lot of people operate within that void between yin and yang, not knowing that, we live in a dualistic reality. We need both. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having the experience of either. When, we might be physically yin, mentally yang, but then that just creates, it's like static on a TV. We're not in alignment with ourselves, usually because we want that thing there, but we were told we can't have it or shouldn't have it or couldn't have it or won't have it back then. So we get caught, this, like a little hook pulling us back from what we want. Then when we do break that and we get the thing that we say we want, we feel guilty about it. So that's someone else's ideology about what they want you to do. So that comes back to, well, whose life are you really living then? Yours or theirs? But most of us are unconsciously so still heavily influenced by what mum wants, what dad wants, their approval, what our family wants, what society wants. Most people just want to fit in and exist in that space, and that's absolutely fine. There are also other people that want to strive and do something different, go out on an edge or dare to try something, like start a business, for example. But then I remember when I started my business back in the day, I had dad's voice, because he had a steady job for 52, 53 years. And I remember the day I told him I'm going to go out on my own. I think I was starting as a PT. And, but what if this? How are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And it wasn't until I had a mentor to take me through that. And he was saying, no, you don't think in terms of money, think in terms of sessions. So you need 3 or 4 sessions a week to pay this rent, another session to pay that bill, another one. So altogether, let's aim for 6 sessions a week. Anything after that is, he called it drinking money, but he was a country boy. It's interesting you say about the breathing, because 9.9 people out of 10 would have a breathing dysfunction, right? And a lot of people are doing this breath work stuff, which is great. At the same time, they're not being taught how to breathe properly. They're not getting that adequate oxygen carbon dioxide exchange in ratios that suit them. And it's beneficial to do the hyperventilating at points, but if we're already yang, we're already inhaling more than we're exhaling. So we get that buildup of it's like holding your breath for so long. You get that sort of buildup of CO2 so much that we need the oxygen. And that's how people, I would argue, live on that kind of cusp throughout their entire life.
Yeah, a continual low tolerance for carbon dioxide. And I know when I teach people about it, one of the myths is, we need more oxygen. We need to breathe more oxygen. But what we see, the Bohr effect shows it in science. When we have higher carbon dioxide, more oxygen moves from our red blood cells into the mitochondria. And to simplify that at home, I use the analogy. It's like the postman gets to deliver more post to the homes. And the homes in this analogy are the primary energy producers of every cell in the body. So yeah, I really resonate with what you're sharing, because I tell them, because their brain will hear, I've done that before. I've sat with someone and they said, take a few deep breaths. I'm like, none of that. This isn't like every time you feel stressed, take a few. No. Let's actually get to some of the root causes so you don't need to take it every time you get a little stressed. Like as you were speaking to, let's retrain how your body breathes for 23 hours a day on its own when you're not even doing the practice, So again, back to men, they're just like, oh my God, Peter, I got this horrible feeling. What the hell can I do? That's the first thing we can do. They feel better and they're like, it's one little step. Oh my God, I can actually change my experience in my life. Oh my God, this will work, And what you said before, societal idealisms, living defined by other people's values, we will be sick until we wake up to our true values. It's the intelligence of this design. We will be sick, diseased, struggle in life because it's trying to wake us up to what is your authentic life if you were living it for you. I love how intelligent this thing is. It's painful at times, but it's so intelligent, the
Well, it's
design.
only painful because it's trying to tell us something.
Exactly.
And we're just not listening to it. That's all. I always tell people like a little joke with the breathing thing because for a lot of people, it's quite a conscious change to get the ratio of the correct breath, especially from where they've come, likely breathing through their neck all the time, out, mouth breathing up through the shoulders and the neck to down in the belly and the diaphragm. And what does that feel like? And some people like knowing the anatomy of, the blood, the air coming in, being oxygenated in the blood, then getting pumped in the heart, then out through the body, through the left atrium. But then consciously getting that to a point where you're subconsciously competent, as you were saying, where you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens automatically, like a child. Watch a child, they'll breathe perfectly until they don't. And then that's usually stock standard. But it can take 3,000 to 5,000. If you're learning a new skill, a new repetition of something, be it breathing, squatting, walking, whatever it is, from scratch to proficiency, that subconsciously competent state, it can take 300 to 500 repetitions to drill that into the nervous system where it's recognized as a pattern, and you can do it without thinking about it. But to break down an old pattern and to build the new one, it can take 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions to break down the old one and instill the new one. So I joke with patients. So I've got good news and I've got bad news. Bad news is it can take 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions for you to do this consciously before it becomes subconscious. And the good news is we breathe rounded up to 30,000 breaths a day. So if you're conscious with it, you could be sorted by dinner.
I like that. I call it in my business DIMU. DIMU stands for deep, insightful, meaningful understanding. What that means is I don't desire to give takeaway information or kind of passing comment type of stuff. When I teach them, I want it to be so deep that they can't forget what they've heard. An insight means their whole world looks different after it. Meaningful means as you would get it. Always connecting it to their goals. They're like, well, I want to 10x my business. Why the hell are we talking about breathing? So meaning, like, I want to improve how I show up in my marriage. Why the hell are we talking about breathing? Meaning, well, it's going to influence your state, which will influence your strategy in those, right? And then understanding, I love teaching the principles of science. Why? Just can't argue with it. They can't go, no, but you can't know but physiology and science. You can't know but gravity. Oh, no, but gravity doesn't work for me. It's gravity, And I know you would get it when you teach the science and the principles. They can't, no, but it's like, you're a robot. And they'll go, no. And I'm like, this will help you.
Yeah, I'm all for the science. And I think at the same time, I'm going to be my own devil's advocate and say science is also very limiting because science can only work with what it can, weigh and measure and see and touch and all that kind of stuff. But then you go into the field of mind and emotion and even spirit, where as soon as you say the word spirit, most people are they've sort of checked out because they're too attached to the material to be anything else. How have you found, because you've traveled a fair bit, right?
I would say it's more Australia. I've studied a lot, but in terms of travel, not as much.
I meant sort of where your base has been.
Oh, totally.
Been
Yeah,
around,
I've been
yeah.
all over Australia. Yeah.
Have you found differences in people, I guess, town to town, state to state, etc.?
It's interesting, right? Because it kind of ties into the perception projection piece. Because I'm aware of, like, some people, for example, I'm on the Gold Coast and they would be like, Burleigh Heads, it's such a busy place. But I notice, and this ties into the principles, because I agree science has its place, but then there's principles to psychology, emotion, spirituality. I want to find what are the principles. An example of a principle. One day I go to Burleigh, my head's full. It's full of noise. And then I go, Burleigh's so busy. It just feels so intense. 2 days later, I go, my head's quiet. It's relaxed. Oh, Burleigh's such a nice, quiet, spacious place. So I guess what I've observed a lot of the time is my internal world projected out onto wherever I go. That's one thing I see sometimes, and then other times I don't. But I guess if I were to give some generalizations, values, right? Like where we're talking about, and you were mentioning about what authentic life do people want to live, I see there's slight differences in values, perhaps. I could say in Queensland that there may be more values of a slower pace of life or more values for perhaps a little bit more sun. People go, why'd you live up here? I don't know. It's sunnier. It's warmer. Those are some of my values. Yeah. And then Sydney, very innovative, very go-getter. Some people go, it's a busy place, but I love Sydney. Right. So again, as you would get, you take you wherever you go. So that's what I'm aware of with all the places I've been. Who have I been as I've been there?
Well, you
as
also
well.
meet, not only do you take you wherever you go, you also meet you wherever you go. And if someone stirs something in you, in psychology, they say, well, if you spot it, you got it. You're just looking at you, the part of you that you don't really want to know that's there, essentially. And I mean, we all get caught in that trap from time to time. What are some simple changes that you've observed when, I guess, some of your clients are consistent with these things?
The big piece of they start to feel a sense of control of themselves in their life. And I like the saying they become a co-creator of their life, because I believe we co-create with an intelligence outside of us. But you see in habit science, like every small little win someone accumulates, I believe builds esteem. What is self-esteem? Someone's self-assessment of self. The other saying I love that one of my dear mentors mentions, internal authority. So that means if you say you're going to do something, your nervous system isn't like, yeah, you're full of shit. So a lot of these men, they've honestly lost faith. Again, some of them they can execute in business. It may be in their personal life. For others, personal life's good. They're not executing in business. So I'd say they get faith back in their ability to design and create the life they want. And that's internal authority. So when they're like, I'm going after this goal, their nervous system goes, yeah, you can do it. Versus they'd set it, and I was that back in the day, it'd set a goal, nervous system like, yeah, good luck with that. So internal authority, trust in their capacity to influence and change their life. That's the highest level thing.
Yeah, I remember a Jungian Jungian analyst once said that 70% of the world is still stuck in the child archetype, meaning that they can be physical adults, but psychologically, unconsciously, they're still that child, that 5-year-old, 7-year-old, however old they were. And that's really who's running the show in the background. But also when you go through a stressful event, that's your default setting that you perceive and project from. Where a child would have a tantrum, an adult would go and take drugs. And it's more dangerous as an adult because there's more options. And that's how the drug thing can make you feel better for a little bit, and it might almost work. And then the next time you do it, you think, oh, it's going to work better. And that's how an addiction can form. But I bring up that because if you're stuck in that child archetype and the man wants to, or the adult wants to, chase that goal, and the child's like, oh, no, I'll get in trouble if I do that, then the whole saying, fake it till you make it, will come in. And that's where you create the shadow self. You have to be someone different to who you really are. And then that can only end in living a double life. And that's how a mask is built as well. That just leads to burnout as well. So you're hanging it up. For most.
I remember learning the distinction of the strategic self versus the true self. Like the strategic self that we've learned that I'll be accepted, I'll be loved, I'll be good enough, I'll be worthy, I'll be safe if I show up as this person. And you want to know the biggest state I see in the men, many of them, the fawn response. like in the nervous system. People pleasing, no boundaries, nice guy, just be polite, don't stand up too much, don't expand too much, don't take up too much space. And it's interesting because some of them, I don't know if you've seen it with your men, they had it and then they were just chronically stressed for years where they've just gone into a shell of this kind of depleted nervous system and body. Like, I don't get it. I used to be able to do this, but I feel like this all the time.
I would see it. They once had it, and then something happened, and they went back to who they were before they built themselves back up again. So they become, I guess, in a way, a shadow of their former self. But then, as you were saying, they don't have the esteem to bring that forward. And to go back to the kind of the child archetype thing, one thing that sets us psychologically apart from a child to an adult not only is the neurological capacity, but as an adult, that's all you've got, your word. For me, that's the definition of a man, someone who means what they say and they say what they mean. Because without the word, what do you really have? You can have all the fancy cars and all the money in the world. If you don't live up to your word, as a child, no one's going to want to play with you, spend time with you. And then as an adult, no one can trust you. So then you end up all alone anyway. Peter, what's a classic? So someone comes to you, lack of a dream, right? They want to get involved in something. They don't know what. They just feel stuck. They feel a bit lost. What's your approach dealing with that?
If majority of them, they come and they've been chronically stressed or in freeze and burnt out. So phase one, I've realized that certain parts of their brain that will actually allow them to vision a future that is much more expansive, they primarily fire when there's stability and capacity in their system. So it means with the vast majority of them, I'm going to retrain how they're breathing. I'm going to increase their nervous system capacity with the breath. I'm going to restore their physiology with appropriate nutrition, exercise, sleep, because I like what Dr. Joe Dispenza says. He says, rather living in survival or living in creation. So epigenetically, the first part is to facilitate conditions for their body to switch on genes of capacity and possibility. And then from that place, when I start to help them to find who they really are, their values, and then ask them what they want, it's such a different picture than if I asked them before that. If I ask them before that, they'll go, just want to be happy. I just want to feel safe. Whereas when they've got that physiological stability, safety, and that trust in their nervous system, it's so different to ask them what they want with the kinds of answers that come back. So I stabilize them, I restore them, and then I reconnect them with who they really are to design their life from that place.
Do you find a lot of people, dare say, have a fear of what they think who they are?
In terms of perhaps even a fear of success type of thing, or a
absolutely.
fear of their... Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I know I can be heavily in the science. I'm also very spiritual, right? One understanding that transformed how I saw humans is something called the three principles. It was discovered by a man named Sydney Banks, and it changed how I saw people forever. Why? One of the principles stated that we're all well, we're all healthy, we're all whole. The second principle stated that we experience life through thought 100% of the time. And the third principle was the fact that we're able to have an insight to recognize thought and to see our world differently. So I guess why I answer your question with that, like, do they have a fear of success? That I'm not sure even to the specifics of it. I just find that when we talk for long enough and they have enough insights, with me seeing their unlimited potential, it's like, I don't accept any of your limitations. Oh, you think that's there? I just don't see that. I just don't accept it. Obviously, there can be skills to build. It doesn't mean go jump off a building, you'll fly. No, you need to learn to fly. Weird example, not jumping off buildings, but there's skills to learn, but I see their infinite potential. So my belief is that when you sit with someone who sees that potential in you for long enough and you talk for long enough, that your concept of yourself changes through insights. Every time that, oh, I'm not broken there. Oh, I'm not weak there. Oh, I'm not flawed there. And their concept changes. Because then I see my entrepreneurs going out doing big things, just diving on opportunities, right? So
it's amazing. It's amazing. And I remember I used to have a dog, and I remember watching the dog just do being a dog. And I just saw the dog interacting with other dogs, did a poo over there, marked his territory over there. Zero inhibition. What would life look like if there was no inhibition? We're essentially born into a religion of some sort, most of us. I think 80% of the world, maybe even more, has some kind of an affiliation or subscription to a religious ideology, even if they say they don't practice it. Like even in Australia here, we're living in a Christian culture, heavily influenced by mum and dad, especially mum hormonally and dad behaviorally. So if you first of all, recognize those, I don't want to say inhibitions, but recognize those patterns, know that they're there, and they were there at some point to help you, to serve you. But at some point in the serving, something's only going to serve you for so long until you need something different. And unfortunately, most people have to wait until they're in pain, or be it physical pain, mental pain, emotional. The spiritual pain might just be giving that feeling that you're just not congruent with your own life. Your life circumstances are congruent with who you are. That's probably like you're not living your truth, I guess would be a better way to say that. That's like a spiritual pain. But then if I tell people, picture you're a dog. Even if I say don't do that, you're going to do it, because the dog has zero inhibition. It does not care how fat it is, doesn't care how much money it owes people. It doesn't care about what the other dogs think about it. It's just, there's the ball, I'm going to chase it, done. Now, I know humans are a little bit more complex, but at least the concept, you can sort of work with that. But I love how people want to earn 100 grand a month, let's just say, and you're starting with breath, and people are going to argue, oh, what are we starting with breath for? Well, if you can't breathe when you get the 100 grand a month, you can't really do much with it, can you? For a start, you'll be too tired and sick to spend it on things you want. You'll be seeing doctors and therapists anyway. Pete, just to finish up, feel free to share any final comments or where people can find you, and any information for people if they want to explore working with you.
So I was going to speak to it before. My belief is that within each and every human being, there is an infinite potential. It is limitless. So where you were talking about that inhibition piece, I fundamentally believe that. And I believe that this human body is the vehicle to house driving towards the creation of that infinite potential. So that's why I start with the body as a foundation, to clean that up, to clean the windscreen up, to change the oil filter, to turn down the radio, all the noise in their head, to turn up the GPS, which is their inner instincts and wisdom. And I truly believe if you desire to have something in your life, if you desire for change, you can have it. Like, I've just sat down with so many human beings, probably you yourself, they're like, I can't have this. And you spend enough time with them, it's like, oh, they changed too. They changed. But the key is willingness, right? As you would know, willingness is key. You can't you can't pull a horse to drink water, or whatever the saying is. So yeah, you can change your life. That's the message I want people to hear. Man, you can access a feeling of peace in your body. You can access calmness. You can actually create the life you desire, rather than just respond to it daily like Groundhog Day. If there's been discomfort or dis-ease inside of you, perhaps it's waking you up to a deeper, more fulfilling and authentic experience of life, So where they can find me is on Instagram under Peter New Paradigm. My website is www.newparadigminstitute.com.au, and that's where I've got the one-on-one. And yeah, follow me on the socials, connect, reach out. I'm here to serve.
Beautiful, brother. It was good to catch up. We'll have to
So good.
We'll have to keep this more regular.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and it's been such a privilege and a pleasure to be on to riff.
Anytime. We'll have to get several booked in as soon as we can.
100%.
Thanks, Peter.
My pleasure.
That's a wrap for another episode of The Body's Compass with Matt Sorensen. A big thanks to Peter Williams for sharing his story. To find out more about Peter, check out his Instagram at Peter New Paradigm or his website, www.newparadigminstitutes.com.au. If any of this episode resonates, share it with someone it might help. If it helped you, come back. Before you go, please take a minute to leave a 5-star rating and a warm review. Until next time.